Welcome to Undercomplicating Stuff, where we, two psychologists and coaches with a combined 40 years of experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate important topics. Friendly reminder that this video is meant for conversational and entertainment purposes only. Please see the information section of this video for additional resources. Dr. Gedeon, introduce yourself.
Hi, Stacey Gedeon. I'm a health psychologist and the founder and CEO of a healthcare consulting and professional coaching business. And Dr. Radico.
I'm Julie Radico. I am a psychologist, a coach, an author, and a speaker. Our question today is, how do I know if my friendship is still healthy? And I think this is such a thoughtful, heartfelt question of really wanting to check in with relationships that are important in your life to know where you stand with people who are your friends.
One thing I think it's important to keep in mind, and probably everybody has heard the phrase friendships or people come into our lives for a season, a reason, a lifetime. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Our friendships evolve, and sometimes we have friends from when we were in grade school, and those are people that we can count on and have stayed with us. Other times it may be related to a job or some other situation in your life, and people may come and go, and that's normal. And we evolve, and you may outgrow friends and learn that with life, things change, as do our interests, which tend to tie us to our friendships. And one thing you can do right away is sort of think about a relationship, and maybe you're wondering, I'm kind of getting a little frustrated with this person, or wondering if we're sort of at the same level. And so sometimes it can be helpful, all things being equal, assuming there's no big issue or crisis or stressor in that person's life. If over time you feel like it's very one-sided, and perhaps you're the one that's always initiating, always following up, and they respond right away, but it starts to bother you that they're not doing the initiating. That would be a great time to talk to them. If they're a close enough friend, you can bring that up and say, hey, I kind of noticed. Can you help me understand what's going on with that? And it may be that that's just how they are, or it may be something deeper that you need to talk about.
Hypothetically, we'd want all friendships to be 50-50. We would want to know that we're each mutually invested in the same amount and giving the same amount. That's not often how friendships work. And to your point, they ebb and flow. So you do want to, on the whole, be able to look at the course of your friendship and go, yeah, on average, I feel like we sort of leveled out to be 50-50 in how much we showed up, how much we initiated the contact, how invested we felt like we were. But there are definitely going to be seasons in our lives where there's something happening with a family member. There's something happening with your own health. There's a big, huge thing that happened at work where you might not be able to show up for your friends in a way that you want to. I work very closely with a lot of medical residents, and being in medical school, being in any graduate program, being in residency, any sort of training, a postdoc, those are really heavily taxing times in our lives. The work demand is so high that hours that you're expected to be, up and at work and or doing work, even if you're at home, that can make it really hard to show up as a friend in some ways that you really would want to. And so knowing that you on average want things to be as equal as they can be, knowing that there are times in your life where you might be giving 90% and they're giving 10%, and that might be okay as long as you are talking about it. Having open communication about it is really important because you might have friends that you're like, oh, this person was a seasonal friend for me. This was my closest friend in high school, and we grew up and we sort of grew apart. And now maybe we are friends on social media. I check in, I see the posts that they make about their lives, and I like them and I send kind comments, and that feels healthy and okay. And that's a layer of friendship. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, oh, that's a person that I really didn't want to lose. And maybe it's somebody you want to reconnect with. So I think about an analogy for friendship related to like an onion and the layers of an onion. And so if you think all the way to like a core of an onion, those are going to be like that center. They're the core people in your life who are maybe in your day-to-day daily life. They're the person who you might text, I stubbed my toe. Like think of who that would be, who would respond well to that, right? Like in that level of like, okay, this is an annoying thing, but like something that happened in a minute, and but that person would be like, oh man, that sucks. You work your way out in these layers of, okay, well maybe these are the people I hang out with, and you decide the time frame, and like these are the people I talk to about X, and these are people I see this often, and these are the colleagues that I have that I would hang out in this kind of way, and these are the people that maybe I had in high school or graduate school or grade school, or like, and they can ebb and flow in between these layers. They're not stationary layers. But one of the issues I hear is if you are thinking about where you would place a friend, think of a friend, and where would you place them in your layers of like, this is how close they are to my core and this is where I want them to be. And then think about where they might place you in their onion. And if that's different, like if you're saying they're a core person or they're like one layer out from the core, and they would say, yeah, she's my friend, but maybe she's like 5 layers out from the core. That might work in some instances, and it might not work in others. So just really being thoughtful about, well, who are the people in your layers? Does it feel good of where they're at in those layers? And if so, why? If not, then what's making that not feel okay? And also kind of taking perspective of, oh, I get they might not be responding because I feel like they're right here in the center and I'm 4 or 5 layers out for them. And so then just really making thoughtful decisions, having thoughtful conversations about what does that mean then for your friend dynamic.
Absolutely. And when we look at any relationship and we're trying to determine, is this healthy? Is this still mutually beneficial? Think about, do you trust that person? And do you feel safe with them emotionally? Is this someone that you can be vulnerable with and can be yourself with? And if not, they may be an outer layer onion piece, which is fine. We all have different friends and different ways that we do things with. And I know of people that have friends where maybe they haven't talked in 10 years, but boy, if something really big happened, they'd be the first person to call, and the other person would pick up and say, you know what? Let's pick up right where we left off and be there for them. And then you have other people that be available, they may not be available, but you have a lot of fun with them. And part of it then is just knowing what your expectations are and having those be consistent with the relationship. So it's incredibly frustrating if you are expecting certain things from a relationship, in this instance, friendship, or you think you have an agreement about how you're going to do things and it doesn't turn out that way. That gets really frustrating, hurtful, and it's like that saying, if you keep doing the same thing and getting the same results, it's kind of a problem. So to your point, to really bring it up and talk to that person, that's really, really important. Also, you talk about the onion. What I think of are refrigerator friends, is what I call them. So these are the friends that would feel completely comfortable coming into your house, taking off their shoes, and going right in your refrigerator, get themselves something to drink without asking, without needing to be asked, and vice versa. If you have a friend that you would feel completely comfortable doing that, not think twice about it, nor would they, that would be sort of your inner core type of onion friend.
And at some level, we might want every single person that we think is awesome to be a refrigerator friend, like a core person for us. That is just not realistic. Social media makes it feel like we are supposed to have hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of friends. And that's not how humans work. We can maintain really good, healthy relationships with a certain number of people. And there's not a magic number, but it's not 1,000. Like you don't have the mental capacity to maintain close, thoughtful relationships with hundreds of even like people. So being really thoughtful about, well, what are the levels of friendship that I'm hoping for from this person? What makes me want to be friends with them? What feels healthy about this relationship? And how do I want to go about navigating, seeing if this is a good fit? And one of the other things that I think is so tough now in friendships is, so back in my day, aging myself, I grew up in grade school times, even some of high school, where like we definitely didn't have a lot of social media, and we didn't really have the concept of ghosting. So we think about ghosting a lot in like romantic relationships, which is where you just stop communicating with that person and you don't tell them that you're no longer wanting to engage in that relationship. You just stop responding. You just shut down on all your social media. And that can be really hurtful. It's similar, like you can have all these different signals of interactions or non-interactions, like ghosting for friendships, where maybe you see a group of friends that, again, with these layers of friendship, maybe you thought they were like really here in your onion and they think you're here. And so you see pictures online of them having hung out at an event without you. And now that leads you to this spiral of, oh no, am I not as good of a friend as I thought I was? Do they not value my friendship? When they probably really value you, but they can't be core close friends with 100 plus people. You just can't. So, thinking about all these ways that social media can make that pressure heightened, can make it feel like you have to show up for so many people in so many ways, but also make you feel like you're missing out if like anybody anywhere in your level, like your layers of onion here, are hanging out without you or do something that you like, to have a conversation that you're like, oh, is that an inside joke that I don't know? Like, there's so much to trip over here and get yourself caught up in this sort of rumination, unhelpful worrying about friendships when maybe your friendship is healthy and you're just like reading into signs that were not intentionally there to hurt you. So being really thoughtful of just, we live in a very interconnected society where we're very distanced, but we're very close because of social media, and just navigating that, like you are not going to be, and nobody for you, not everybody can be your core people, and that's okay. And really being okay with finding ways to self-soothe and come back to your own core people if you feel like somebody mismatched with the level of onion layers that you thought, like between you and them. It's like being kind to yourself around that.
Yes, and I agree that it is quality over quantity. And again, we always talk about an evolutionary perspective. These things don't just come out of nowhere. And again, imagine, thousands of years ago, you couldn't be with a bunch of people and a bunch of different tribes. You had to protect kind of your own tribe. And so to survive, you had to have close-knit people. And now it doesn't mean you didn't hang out with other tribe people, but that was sort of the idea. And I love that you brought up social media because, again, nobody has a million friends or a million close friends or even a million, like, even getting into the outer onion layer friends. And people can feel really badly about that. And we encourage you to find your core people, do things that you enjoy together. If you feel like there's a disconnect or your onion layers are really divergent from each other, have a conversation. And so you can clarify what you're feeling, what they're feeling, what your expectations are. And sometimes it may mean you have to move on, and other times it makes you even stronger.
My key takeaway is check in. So if you are sitting there going, well, what if this person doesn't want to be my friend? Or I don't understand why they're doing or not doing what I hoped that they would be. Check in. If that's a relationship of value, talk to them. And when I say a relationship of value, even if you're like, oh, this was a seasonal friend and I'm totally okay with it, do yourself the kindness and model how you want to be treated, of not ghosting them, of saying to them, like, hey, I'm so glad that we had this time together. Let's keep in touch online. Great. You let them know where you're thinking about they are in your onion, like what layer they're sort of at, right? And it's not like a rank thing. Again, they can move in and out at different points of your life, and you might set a layer where you're like, yeah, I think they're here, and then you go, oh no, they're closer. Like I realize I miss them, and I want to like whatever it might be, modeling for yourself and for them this idea of checking in when it's really important. And even if you're like, oh, this isn't like super duper, like I don't think I have to have an in-depth conversation about this, but still sort of like modeling for yourself and for them. Hey, like I'm happy to see you around. I'll see you at the next meeting, right? We're not hanging out in between kind of thing, but you don't have to say that. You could say, oh, I'll catch you at the next meeting. So you're sort of like norming that you're happy to see that person, but here's sort of the layer where you're thinking they're at. Be thoughtful about who you need to have these conversations with and having them in a meaningful way with most people in your layers that you would call a friend.
And my takeaway would be to make sure you're nurturing the relationships that you want to maintain. And if you think about those closer to the core, may or may not need more nurturing and more tending to, and again, at different times. And I love the idea when you explain how they can move through layers of the onion depending upon the phase in life, the stage, all sorts of things. And that we need to nurture the ones and pay attention to those ones that we really want to maintain and keep. Otherwise, they are apt to go to the outer layers and then maybe fall off, and that would be pretty unfortunate.
If this topic resonated with you, please share it with somebody that you care about. Also, please comment, like, and subscribe. You can message us on YouTube or our LinkedIn channels with suggestions of questions you'd like us to discuss in future episodes.